Hey folks, welcome to the show, episode 85, Port Adelaide VS Essendon review. It's my team in the review, folks. Port Adelaide up against the Essendon Bombers, folks, the Essendon Football Club at Adelaide Oval. So let's talk about the scoreline. Who won the game? And we'll get into the rest from there and talk about the game and the stats, the best players and everything in between as we do. So, look, the scoreline was 20 goals and 13 behinds for Port Adelaide, equaling 133 points for Port. And Essendon, whoa, they kicked 10 goals, 10, equaling 70 points. So 63-point winners to Port. They got their first win on the board, folks. I personally was a happy man, but we'll talk about why. So, just the goals quickly. Horne-Francis for Port Adelaide, he kicked 3 majors. Luke Kosciusz kicking 3 majors. Georgiadis 2, Berry 2, Richards 2, Durden 2, Drew, Sweet, Bergwijn, Watkins, Burn-Jones, Burgoyne, single goals apiece. And that rounds out Port Adelaide's goal kickers. Essendon, well, Caddy kicked 4 for them. Frioni, Langford, Durham, Caldwell, Kako, Perkins, single goals apiece for them, folks. Well, Port Adelaide's best, none other than the man himself, Butters. That man right there, sitting, right there. Look, Horne-Francis, no doubt about that. He's back in form. Alia, Burgoyne, and Rosie. Well, for Essendon, Caddy, Merritt, Caldwell, Johnson. Injuries. Well, hamstring gate has hit my club, and it's hit the captain, Connor Rosie, going down. Third term, clutching the hamstring, very high up the hamstring, and it's turned out to be ligament damage and could miss up to 12 weeks. So, rest up, captain. Bergwijn, well, he rolled an ankle, bit of bone bruising. He's out this week, so 2 injuries to Port Adelaide. Essendon, well, they had Redmond. He went down with a knee injury on the outer side of the leg, on the knee. Sharp, well, he hurt his ankle, and I think he rolled it, but quite a severe roll. So that rounds out that. Let's talk about the game. So from Port's aspect, I thought they started off quite well. I was impressed by. They were slow last week. They weren't direct. They had the ball in motion. They brought in a new ruckman and Sweet versus Blankston in the ruck for Essendon as well. So Sweet versus Blankston. And yeah, Sweet obviously being a big ruckman, he bodied around Blankston early, got in an early goal, used his body and picked the ball up and just kicked a nice goal for the big fella. So very happy for that. There's a bit of Jack Reacher about Sweet. He's a big unit. He pushes the weight around, folks. He does not muck around. For Blankston, look, he's not a ruckman that is a big AFL ruckman. He's a key defender who's been thrown in the ruck. Essendon, we talked a lot about that. I've said a lot about Essendon's ruck situation. I feel for the bloke because he's just been thrown in there. So I'm not going to criticise his effort because he gives 100% effort. And you know what? He does quite a good job. It's just he's just not that position of player. So how can we really be too criticising him too much, because he is really just thrown in there and he's doing the best he can, and that's all you can ask for a player. But for Port, well, Port basically had a great first quarter. They lodged 9 consecutive majors as Butters and Rosie were just at their elite best. And also of Horne-Francis, he slotted 3 majors, successive majors, in a spree where they're untouchable. They just basically had a 32-point lead at quarter time, so they went in 6 goals, 5 behinds to Essendon's 1 goal 3. So really, would like to see them go in 8 goals 3. That would have been better, even better, folks. You can't ask for much more than that. That's me being pretty. I just want to see that more accuracy, folks. So yeah, they stretched to advantage of 50 points in the second quarter as the Bombers were goalless, and that spanned across a 22-minute mark of being goalless until Sam Durham kicked a goal. So Sam Durham, arguably one of their best young players. And look, Port held on to a commanding 49-point lead at halftime. 10 goals and 7 behinds. That's what I like to see a little bit better. We'll put those goals into place. Kicking 4 more. And only a couple of ones. But for Essendon, only 2 goals, 6 at the break. So, look, if they're accurate, it would look better if they were 6 goals too. But I know that doesn't quite work like that. So, it's a hard one. I thought Port's attack on the ball. So, they were very slow against North Melbourne. There's no doubt about that. I thought their slow kick ball movement from the half back was not the traditional Port Adelaide game of moving the ball quick with their good ball users like Farrell and Marshall for the big guy, and also Logan Evans can use the ball quite well. If he's been switching off the wing and off the half back. So look, especially using Farrell's kick, he's moved into that Houston role. For Essendon, look, Kako was good in that forward line role, but it's hard. They don't have that lockdown sort of forward. But look, the hosts, Essendon tried. Also, they scored 5 goals to 3. Port scored 5 goals to 3 to increase their margin by 62 points as Connor Rozee went down with the hamstring injury. Look, they were running hard. Could they maybe put Connor more to a half back role to not make him be able to run, not having to run so much? It's hard to say that now from a coaching's aspect. I feel it's a hard one, really. He could have done that either way. He fell trying to sort of awkward tackle situation. He's overstretched that hamstring. So look, they went 62 points into the last quarter. Then we talked about how much they won by in the end. It was over the 60-point margin, as we mentioned. So they didn't trim much off their scoreline going into the final quarter, and meaning they ran it out and kept a decent percentage. So let's just talk a little bit about players. Well, the vice captain, and let me tell you something, folks. I remember David King's comments. This is probably a little bit just to add in, and he was talking about this is opening round, and he's talking about Hawthorn. He talked about Newcomb and Sicily's captain situation, and for some reason, I don't know why he mentioned Port Adelaide, and this is something I've been wanting to say, I guess, because I love my club, as you all do, and this will tie into even something more than just my club, and he goes on about co-captains. It's this new modern term of co-captains is what they all do now. Okay, that's okay, fair enough. That's what you want to call your captains. But for a long time in history, we had captains and then a vice captain. That's just what they called it. For now, they've just changed it to co-captains, however you want to jazz it up. And for some reason, David King brought up my club and mentioned, well, Zach Butters, and not even mentioning that Zach Butters. So he was mentioning Zach Butters should have been called captain or whatever term he come up with. Is what he meant, okay? And not even mentioning that he wasn't. Zach Butters is a vice captain. Connor Rozee is the captain. You could argue and say Butters could be the captain, but he's not. He's a vice captain, okay? And the reason why I bring that up is it just David King's comments for that I just thought was like not understanding my club at all, not understanding that he was a vice captain and Connor's the captain. So look, and we have a tradition of the number 1 jersey or Guernsey being given to a captain. So David King, I just wanted to say that because I feel your comments had no understanding of my club and where Port Adelaide sat. The fans, the members, everyone in between for Port Adelaide love to have the number 1 Guernsey on their captain. So that's Port Adelaide's tradition. I don't knock North Melbourne's tradition. That's David King's side or who he's played for, who he goes for. I do not knock how they do it. They can do co-captains. They can do captains, vice captains. That's up to them. And I just don't think David King's comments were on the ball. I just thought there's captain and vice captain, and I also personally like the fact there's captain and vice captain. The co-captains thing's a thing that I don't like. It's just something that I think co-captains is just a little bit. Every club does it different. I'm not going to criticize other clubs' tactics or how they want to pick their captains. I just think it's a modern day term, and it's just not what Port Adelaide stands for. They stand for a bit of tradition, and they value the captain and vice captain. So that's my take on that, folks. West Sickan was Zach Butters. He had 36 disposals, 7 clearances, and along with Rozee had the ball on the string too. While Alir, well, the big centre back, he took 19 marks and absolutely dominated across that centre back line. Horn Francis, well, he had 26 touches, kicked 3 goals, and also a game burst in 9 majors through the midway through the opening term. Port's captain, Connor Rozee, had 21 disposals and 4 clearances before the injury, so he was on touch for that. We've talked about Essendon's injuries. At one stage, Port's inside 50 count was 21-2 early on. Midway through the second term, the Bombers were down by 50 points. It was essentially already out of the game. So, yeah, look, let's talk about some stats here. Players' stats. From Essendon's perspective, look, it was hard. Disposal-wise, well, Cardwell had 27 for Essendon, Archie Roberts 26, Zach Johnson 26. And I've seen a thing on agenda setters before, like, should they drop Archie Roberts? Well, the man had 26 disposals. I don't even know why his name was on that list to start with. Just strange discussion sometimes, and they don't actually even look at the man's output. That's just my view on that. They had a few other players on that list, but I just wanted to say that because I look at this disposals. He had 26. He had enough of the ball. Cardwell 27, Zach Johnson 26, Merritt 25. So Archie Roberts had more than Merritt. So should Merritt be dropped? That's just discussion, folks. Luke Parrish was on that list, but he had 24. Look, were they ever going to beat Port Adelaide's midfield? No, don't think so. Let's just be honest. Port Adelaide's midfield is one of their strengths. It's not a knock on Essendon. It's just they got a better midfield Port. So Watkins 23, Evans 22, Burgoyne 22, Richards 22, Rozee 21 before the injury. William Drew only 21, so not as many for him. Obviously, Butters 36. Horn Francis had his best game of the year so far, 26. So he's coming back off that injury. He's at his pre-season run, folks. What about the clearances? Who won the clearances? And we'll get to the big man after that. Well, an interesting one Darcy Parish had 8 clearances. So a man that was on that list had over the 20-odd disposals, and he had 8 clearances. So sometimes you got to look at the bigger picture. This is a positive thing for the Essendon fans. Sometimes, it's like the football reporting or however you want to label it in the media, and they'll throw names like that. But not once did they go through the players' stats on that. It was just talking points. So, the experts that are on the panel, including footballers and that, haven't added in. He's had 8 clearances. So look, whether they want to say those clearances are effective or not, I don't think that it's relevant to a point. But that man's had 8 clearances. He's leveled with the top clearance player of the game, which is William Drew as well. He had 8, so he's tied in with them. Look, obviously Zach Butters 7, Watkins 4, Jordan Sweet 4, Connor Rozee 4 before he got injured. Maybe Parrish would have had less if Rozee was there, but 4 for him, 4 for Richard. So that's quite interesting. Richard's coming in there. I like him. I think there's a little bit of Robbie Gray about that man. That's a big call. I get that. That man is a legend. Yeah, I was right. He's right there. Look at the man kicking a goal, clutch goal after siren. Shout out to Robbie Gray. But yeah, I feel like he's started his career a little bit like him. He come in, small forward. If you can give this man a little bit of time around the midfield. Ewan McKinley, who's coming into his own now as well, he had 2 clearances along with Zach Merritt. So let's get to the hitouts. Well, the hitouts, 25 for the big sweet. Blankston, well, he had 20. So yeah, that's not a bad game for the man. Peter Wright with 14, Whitlock with 5, Langford with 1. So when you look at that, that's a few hitouts for Peter Wright too. And Whitlock, he's only a young lad, so he only had the 5. So it's probably a bit of a harder one there from that aspect. But yeah, Blankston's given a crack. Peter Wright spending a bit more time in the ruck too. So, and that Essendon going to need that. We've talked about that from a fair while. Look, Butters, he got meters gains of 771. Zach Merritt, 509. Zach Johnson, 500. Archie Roberts, 476. Jackson Pryor, 474. Connor Rozee, before he got injured, he had 443 meters gained, so he's almost up there. Just unfortunately got injured. Cardwell, 424. Horn Francis, 416. McKinley, 407, so he's carrying the ball, moving well. Well, Durham, 381. Todd Marshall and Lukosius, they had 300 odd apiece. Along with Nate Caddy. Cam Farrell, 300. Leah, 300. Joe Barry, 290, just falling below the 300 mark. I'd like to see him get a bit more time across the ground. Could he be thrown in the middle a bit too? I heard Ken say he's more of a half forward pocket player. But he was drafted and compared to, closing speed of like a Zach Butters with the tackling and stuff like that. And I wouldn't mind seeing him run through there when he gets a chance. So just a little food for thought. They're the stats. Porter back. They played a good game. I was happy. Essendon, look, we've talked about how it's going to be a harder year for them. So a lot of the pile on in the media this week, they played a Hawthorn that's a top position side. Port Adelaide, they're a 50-50 one. Yeah, look, I feel like I may be a fan, so I'm going to take the fan out of it. But also I feel like they've got a decent list. If they can gel together and develop well together, I feel like they can go up the ladder. It's the top 10 this year. There's a potential for them to play the top 10. Connor Rozee out, yes, it's going to hurt them. Can they get a player in to fill that void? Probably not. But this is where opportunities are grabbed and taken. So take them with 2 hands, the players coming in. Ollie Wines, Will Brodie, whoever you bring in. It's not a like for like, but it's just going to have to do. Lockie Jones also coming in for Miles Bergman. So, Essendon fans, don't feel bad. They gave it a crack. It's on the next week for them. I know the coach said a few things. He named Caddy and all this sort of hoo-ha. It's probably not the best look, but hey, the coach should have used him as actual example, being the best player and how the other players have got to stand up around him. That's my 2 cents on that. From Port, Josh Carr's first win, the boys' first win of the year. I was happy. They played fast football, unfortunately resulting in a bit of a hamstring gate for Connor. But that's the Port that I like to see. They bring that game and an attitude and the ability to run and tackle and chase on top of the running fast play. That's what I want to see. They'll be harder to beat this year. Thanks, folks. And we're watching the game this weekend. And then next weekend, I'll be at the MCG to watch the boys. So, we're off to the next game. Thank you, folks. Cheers.